What the fuck could you possibly know about being fucking healthy? You're a fucking truck driver slash Uber driver slash YouTuber. You're not a fucking doctor. You're not a scientist. You don't know shit. Well, I gotta admit, over the weekend, I had a lot of reflection about the past 3 years and my journey. Let me fucking fix this goddamn piece of shit. I had a lot of reflection over my past 3-year journey. And, I've seen a spike in growth on my channel. I'm getting a lot of more feedback. I'm getting a lot more research submissions. I'm getting a lot more data, that is expanding my understanding of the problems. Let me take this fucking thing out of my ear. Distractions and shit. I'm getting a whole lot of feedback that is changing my understanding of the problems we're facing today. And, and that's why are we sick? We are more sick now than we've ever been. The United States has fallen pretty much into like 49th place or something like that, 50th place in terms of our health, in terms of, how much health care we require to live, and which means our health span has decreased. I look around me and I see health problems everywhere. Many of them that people just deal with or don't even really acknowledge that they're there and that they are a problem. They just press on with their daily lives, oblivious to the fact that a lot of these problems they can actually mitigate or reduce or even outright cure if they just did a few things differently with their diet, with their lifestyle. And I started out this journey like every motherfucker watching this channel. I identified the problem. The problem, I was pre-diabetic. I was 255 pounds, obese. I felt like shit all the time. I needed naps all the time. I generally was depressed beyond belief, to almost catastrophic levels of depression. I did get the occasional up, but the depressions were definitely far more significant than those. And I was a mess, both physically, both emotionally, how I felt. I had massive amounts of allergies. There was like 3 or 4 month periods I would spend broke out in hives, particularly when I was out on the road a lot. And I'm starting to understand a little bit of the mechanisms that may have contributed to that. And I was oblivious, thinking I was happy because I was eating all these wonderful foods that brought me joy, like pizza and fucking Pop-Tarts and soda and Gatorade and Mountain Dew. I was a big Mountain Dew motherfucker. And now the more and more deeper I've, dove into this rabbit hole of the past 3 years, the more I'm beginning to understand just how misguided I am. And it's through a journey of research, trial and error, self-experimentation, and of course this channel and the feedback that you guys have given me through your experiments and your trials and tribulations on the things I talk about, that I've kind of had a little bit of an epiphany, I guess, on health and how we can, at the very least, improve. I do think that we've fucked things up to a point where it is impossible to achieve optimal health in the current state of affairs. This is one of the reasons why I've kind of come out against going optimal health, because you can literally make yourself neurotic with the level of micromanagement that you would have to do, and it is a lot deeper than a lot of optimal health motherfuckers actually go, by the way. Now that I'm hearing a lot of new data, especially on the glyphosate and the GMO thing and the whole organic thing, as many of you know, if you go back a few years in my videos, I took a shit on organic. I took a shit on GMO. I thought of it as a marketing term. I didn't trust it. I still don't entirely trust it, because I do think that the food industries are bastardizing it, finding little loopholes or little things that they can get around so that they can put that organic label on just about everything. Organic cane sugar, I'm talking to you, motherfucker. There is something to be said that is making me reverse that view to a point. Now, I'm not ready to go all in and say that organic is the way to go, that you should trust it fully to fix your issues. I don't. However, that being said, there is a bigger in-your-face poison in our food system that has come to my attention recently that explains a lot, correlates heavily with the rise in chronic disease levels, with the entire dysfunction that I've gone over and that I've tried to reverse in myself and in those who listen to my bullshit over the years. It's a strong suspect in, the why we are fat and sick category. But first, let me come at you from a little bit. We're gonna start off at practical and work our way into digging deep into the optimal fucking health aspect of it. So you're unhealthy, right? You're overweight, you're obese, or you're just normal body weight, but you feel like shit all the time. You have autoimmune problems, you're sick, you're allergic, you're, having digestive issues, you're having kidney problems, you're having liver problems, you're having all these fucking problems, even though you might not be obese. Turns out a lot of people are in that category, not just the obese category. At least, I've always viewed obesity as a symptom of a bigger problem, and that if you fix the bigger problem, the obesity goes away. Oh, but gradually. And it does. And I stand by that. But many people that come to my channel, they're coming here because of obesity. They're not coming here because of the health. I started this journey not because I was unhappy with how I looked. Yes, I was fat. Yes, I probably could have used some improvement aesthetically, and probably still can. But it was never a huge concern of mine. I came at it because I wanted to not feel like shit. I was tired of being depressed a lot. I was tired of the immune responses, the inflammation, the fucking constant allergy problems, the needing a nap to get through my day. And of course, the pre-diabetes was starting to show its face. And, I caught it right before it really showed its face, to where my A1C would be out of range. So I was fortunate in that my attention was drawn to it before it got out of control. And I think I rescued myself from diabetes completely because I caught it in time, as in I can probably tolerate a carb load without a significant spike in blood sugar. So I'm fortunate there. However, the changes I've seen in my own personal health, they all began as okay, we've been doing this shit for this way. They've been telling us to eat this way. They've been telling us to do the exercise. They've been telling us to go to the gym. They've been telling us to do all of this shit. And I've done it, lost the weight, gained it back, done it, lost the weight, gained it back. That didn't work. Felt like shit, was miserable and hungry the whole time. Allergies were still there. There was all kinds of problems that weren't going away because following the advice of the doctors and scientists and experts and government fucking regulations that said the things I had to do to fix this shit didn't fix shit. If anything, it just enriched various industries, whether it's pharmaceutical, whether it's food industry, whether it's the diet and health industry, whether it's the supplement industry, for those of you who love supplements. There's all these things they tell us to do that involve you spending money on shit, and that just never made sense to me from a common sense standpoint. There was a period of time in history where these chronic diseases were not a big problem. They were a little problem. Like a little bit of the population had these things. Now it's systemic. Our entire population, almost half of us, have cancer before we die. Diabetes is approaching that 50% mark. Autism, they're projecting 1 in 3 in the next 15 years. 1 in 3. Autism. Autoimmune is everywhere. I see it all the time. And just people around me, let alone, I'm sure if you dig into the statistics, you'll see that there are more people with autoimmune problems than without in worldwide societies. Our chronic disease is out of control. The United States has one of the richest economies in the world, and we have the poorest health in the world. Why is that? How did we get rich? We got rich at the expense of our health. We were so concerned with making money and consuming that we lost sight of our own health and wellness and quality of life that comes with being healthy. We take it for granted that we feel like shit all the time. We feel that this is just normal. This is how we are. And once you snap out of that and wake up, you begin to realize that there's something more. There's something more to this, that not everybody that's talking about this shit is out of their fucking mind. That, not everybody who speaks out on these issues is talking out of their ass. Some of them have, detailed life experiences. And taking in the experiences of people who have fixed their problems versus people that wallow in theory and science while not directly dealing with the issues, I believe is the biggest core key on how we dig ourselves out of this fucking hole that we're buried in right now, health-wise. So the first thing you got to do, ask yourself on, this is kind of the how to be healthy video, how to not be sick. You got to ask yourself, what are the sick people around me doing? And you can do this. I do this all the time, by the way. This is kind of like my observation. I'm a little bit of a people watcher, and I like to see trends and things that a lot of different people do that add up to the same thing. And if you look at unhealthy, obese, not even necessarily obese, but unhealthy people around, people that are talking about their illnesses, they got mental problems, they got all of these issues. And what I started doing is, as I observe these people, I observe, what are they eating? How often are they eating? What are they putting into their bodies? How often are they going to the doctors? What kind of drugs are the doctors giving them? What does their environment look like? And when you start doing that, and looking around at the sick people around you, the people with cancer, what are they doing? And you start looking at it from that perspective. And a lot of health gurus like to tell you what to do. This is what you gotta do to be healthy. There's less emphasis on what not to do. What can I stop doing that will fix things? And there's a laundry list. Because there's so many problems in our diet and food system right now that it's not as simple as, I'll just stop eating carbs. Or I'll just stop eating meat, for you vegans out there. That answer is not the key to health. Which explains a lot. It explains why both sides of the keto versus vegan argument, with leaving out the middle ground vegans that went keto, and of course whole foods vegans, they're obviously healthier than their processed vegan counterparts. And the same thing with ketos. The more whole food keto you are, the healthier you'll be, as opposed to a processed food keto. where you're eating lots of factory shit in packages with lots of added chemicals and shit. So, there's a spectrum, and I'm trying to figure out where to sit in that spectrum going forward, which is why I'm digging into the minutia of how far down the optimal health rabbit hole I'm willing to travel to be sustainable and happy and have a balance. Maybe I won't be super healthy. Maybe I'll still succumb to a lot of these problems, but maybe I'll at least extend the time that I am healthy. And I'm currently healthy at age 42. A lot of people my age can't say that. I'm on no medications. My blood work came back just fine recently. I'm of a normal body weight, a normal body fat percentage. My waist circumference, my belly, is of a normal measurement. It's not perfect. You can't see my abs and shit. I'm not the picture of, on Men's Fitness. I'm not taking my shirt off in every video and saying, hey, look at me. You should do this exactly like this, and you too can have this. It's fucking bullshit, all right? So look around you, see the commonalities of unhealthy people, of people that are sick. If you don't want to be sick, you've got to not do the things that sick people are constantly doing. This can apply to any health problem you want to fix. What are people doing on a common denominator standpoint that is leading to that? And I think you'll find, especially when going through the supermarket and you pick out people who are sick, people who, lost their mobility, clearly diabetic, clearly morbidly obese in some cases, or just, you see them in the pharmaceutical aisle and you see what they're getting there, and you kind of figure out, you can look in their shopping cart and see how they eat. Because that is a really good, honest snapshot of how you're eating. And you should do this same thing on yourself. Ask yourself these questions. What are the things that I'm eating that are probably doing me, giving me damage? And if you spend a lot of your time in that middle section of the store, chances are you're doing something to yourself through diet that is causing a lot of the chronic disease, autoimmune problems, cancer, so on and so forth. Because that is where we are most vulnerable, is the food we put in our mouths. And I don't think we pay enough attention to it. We're so consumed with having time, pleasure, and money that we forgot health. And we've separated ourselves from nature. We've separated ourselves from the way we were designed to eat. And we're eating industrially on every level. Vegans love to point out the industrial processed food, meat, being unhealthy, while kind of taking a back seat to the agricultural, chemical farming that's going on, which is equally, if not in some cases more detrimental, I feel, than animal-based agriculture at this point. That being said, we're fucked all the way around in that department. And we're going to get into that a little more as I continue to delve down the rabbit hole that is glyphosate and how it has affected our health. And that's kind of been my theme for the past 3 or 4 days of research, as I've been kind of digging deeper into glyphosate and how bad the problem is. And I got to tell you, I'm sad by it. It let a lot of wind out of my sails. However, I haven't let it destroy me, which is something people can do. I've improved my health markers. I've reversed a lot of my issues with complete ignorance to the glyphosate problem. And I've seen others that have subscribed to me do the same, just by going keto, intermittent fasting. And I can get into some theories as to why I think those help. But overall, I would say that you're in danger of becoming orthorexic when it comes to diet, when you start fearing just about every fucking food in the food chain. And we don't know for sure, 100%, we can't put our finger on one specific thing that does one specific problem in terms of chronic disease. We've created this cocktail of shit, no pun intended, with the gut bacteria theories. We've created a perfect storm of bad nutrition over the past 40 to 50 years that is so profoundly unhealthy for us and causing so much chronic disease that most of our gross national product comes from healthcare now. Most of the money in our economy is based in healthcare and pharmaceuticals, which tells you something is wrong. That should not be the driving force of our economy. If we all got healthy tomorrow and the healthcare system had to, downsize accordingly, our entire economy would collapse. It's going to collapse the other way around, turns out, as we get more and more sick to the point where we can't afford financially to take care of all the sick people. You've got young people sick with old people diseases. You've got old people sick with old people diseases. And it turns out a lot of these chronic diseases were preventable. And many of them weren't on this epidemic scale until, about the time of World War II ending is when it started, and it really ramped up in the 80s and 90s. We've really just, the line went from ticking up to going, fuck yeah, we're going up, bitch. We're going to be unhealthy as shit. Congratulations. Enjoy that pizza and that fucking McDonald's burger and that soda. Eat up. Come on, eat up. Because along with that line has also gone all kinds of economic lines. There's some industries that are particularly rich to this day because of that line. Because we traded pleasure, ease of use, doing things, streamlining, industrialization of our food for health, and we've put so many intermediary things or outside factors into our food to make so that we can yield more profit, more production, more value, and allegedly feed more people. But when you destroy the food population and you're essentially poisoning everybody, are you really feeding more people, or are you just killing more people? I'll leave that up to somebody with more philosophy than I have. However, addressing these issues and figuring out how to fix your own health, that's where we got to kind of pull in a little bit. And look at for those of you who have made progress in this, don't let this pull the wind out of your sails. I almost let it. I was like, what the fuck am I doing here if this is going on? And then I had to take a step back and reflect on what I've accomplished doing the ketogenic diet, doing the fasting. It's given me new theories and thoughts on why those things do work. It's given me perspective on some of the whole foods diets that are not keto and why some of those work. And I do stress some of those working. Same thing with keto. There are people that keto isn't working in. And that is when you want to start fine-tuning your diet. Is if you're doing something that's working for a bunch of people, reversing a lot of health problems, but for some reason it's not working for you, then you might need to dig a little deeper, because there might be something in that food that you normally consume that the other person is not getting in their diet. There might be something in your environment that isn't in that other person's environment that's having success with the diet, with the fasting, with the health benefits of both. I've gotten a little bit of pushback, on people who are saying keto is not, they've been on keto for 6 months and it didn't do shit for them, or they stopped losing weight. We're going to address that in another video. But it's a process of elimination. And one of the things I'm doing as a result of some of this new stuff that's come to light, first of all, I'm going to go more organic with the meats that I eat, and any veg, obviously, as organic as possible. Is that going to get rid of the glyphosate problem? No, it's going to reduce it. It'll make it more manageable for my body. I'm also going to try and eat some of the foods that have the microbes in them that consume glyphosate. So there's that. I'm also fasting. that is probably a big contributor to getting the glyphosate out of my body and also reducing exposure, because if you're not taking it in, then you're only getting it environmentally, and you do still get it as fasting too, by the way, between water consumption, the water that you shower in, the air that you breathe if you're in an agricultural area, particularly during harvest time where they spray their crops to kill that with glyphosate. You're getting exposed that way. So if you ever find you're having some more health issues in the late fall or early winter times, that I would look at that. But there's only so much we can do. I mean, we're knee deep in this glyphosate shit. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. It's completely polluted our world. It would take 50 years to get it out of our fucking system. So really our only hope at this point to manage that particular health threat is to reduce exposure anywhere you can. So we're going to get into that a little bit. I have some homework assignments for those of you who like watching shit that I watch and seeing where I get some of my information. If we look over here, some of the videos I'm about to show you were brought to me by Lee C58. Well, he actually kind of sent me down the rabbit hole with Zach Busch, MD. And we're going to get into what I think of him in a minute. But I wanted to thank Lee C38 for his link. And also, the glyphosate issue, which watch my video where I first talk about this. But it's basically the herbicide that is sprayed on most crops. And if you have autoimmune problems, if you're having a lot of chronic disease issues, autism, mental health problems, you might want to take a closer look at glyphosate and the foods rich in it, and then look at your diet and see how much of that shit are you eating. I found this article also submitted down here by Gianna Giavelli, which was interesting at an interesting observation that links, I've come down hard on sugar, and I stand by that, because metabolically sugar is fucking you in the liver as far as liver fat production and as far as creating bad fat, causing insulin resistance and so on. But there's another factor, is chronic inflammation. And it turns out you're getting the best of both worlds when you're eating sugar. They're using glyphosate on sugar beet, and I wasn't sure, but this article kind of confirms it. It's also being used in sugarcane fields. And it's causing death. It's causing kidney disease. If you have kidney problems, you might want to think about glyphosate. And, it's in the sugar. The sugar, which is in 80% of processed foods. Glyphosate. Corn, glyphosate. Let's get into it. This is what, if you Google the Dirty Dozen, this is from 2017, and the Clean 15. These are the foods that were tested and found to have the worst levels of glyphosate. Now, for a quick recap on what glyphosate does to you, it binds to minerals and destroys some enzymes, destroys some proteins. It causes leaky gut. It causes, in many cases, it's been linked to cause autism. It's been linked to a number of metabolic diseases, birth deformities. It has been labeled by the World Health Organization as a carcinogen. The science against glyphosate is piling up, so much so that Monsanto has sold their company to Bayer, which is like selling the little evil company to the big evil company in my book, because Bayer's got their share of fucking blood on their hands over the years. So if it's enough for the company that invented this shit, that was highly profitable, to want to unload and sell off their company, they know what they've done. They've capitalized on it, and now they're trying to get out from under it before it blows up in their fucking face. And for the past 5 years or so, the GMO thing and all of that has really kind of started pointing the finger in their direction. And people who are in the business world that make shit tons of money tend to get out of the way when the gun's aimed at them. And that's kind of what's going on here. So if we look at the group identified the following items on its dirty dozen list of produce with the most pesticide residue. And some of this can be found in both ketogenic and vegan diets, which is why we should all be concerned with it. And I would contend that a whole foods, the reason that vegans are failing, isn't just because they're not getting all of the amino acids and the phytotoxins and all of that. That's a whole other argument. But the chemical farming in a lot of the produce that you buy in the grocery store that is non-organic, and even glyphosate's even in organic crops thanks to pollution, some of these foods are across the board staples of a vegan diet that are not involved in a keto diet. So to kind of keep it in perspective, because you got two sides telling you their diet's the best for you and the other diet sucks. And we really should be standing more on a common ground. And we're going to get into that when I talk about Zach Busch. That is his name, right? And we're going to get into that when I talk about Zach Busch. So here's the worst. Strawberries. That's keto and vegan. Spinach. Well, all of these are obviously keto or vegan, so we'll just separate the keto stuff. Spinach. Now, I'm unhappy about that, and I've ceased eating spinach. In fact, I'm probably not going to be eating much veg as I tip the needle a little bit further towards the carnivore side of the house, partially based on this new glyphosate research that I'm doing and the things that I'm coming across about it, that if I want to reduce my exposure, I'm going to have to get rid of a few foods that otherwise were big staples of my ketogenic diet, and spinach was a huge staple. It's number 2 on the list. Strawberries are also a huge staple of keto. So if you're having problems while you're keto, autoimmune problems, health problems, depression problems, so on and so forth, I would look, are these in your diet? What happens if you take them out? And that's what I'm doing. I'm eliminating things from my diet for a while. Then I may reintroduce here and there to see how I feel, what my health is like, what my emotions are like, what my energy is like, so on and so forth, which is a way to rule out just how bad your diet, things in your diet are, is to just eliminate them and then gradually reintroduce slowly certain foods, test them to see if they have any problems or not, if they cause you any issues. If you're having an issue, doing an elimination diet, removing, down to foods that you know without a shadow of a doubt do not cause you any problems. If you just drop down to those foods and then gradually reintroduce the rest of your diet back into the mix, you can kind of figure out what's causing you the most problems. Now, it's not perfect. There is still the long-term aspect of things. But as far as acutely, you'll be surprised at how much you can change in a short period of time with elimination diet. So right now I've eliminated spinach from my diet. I'm sad to see it go. I loved buttered spinach. So it's interesting. Nectarines I never eaten. Apples, these are all not part of the ketogenic diet. Peaches. Celery. I used celery a lot. I've cut out celery, not by choice. I never really bought it on my own. It usually came with chicken wings, and I would eat that with some blue cheese, which is also probably shitty for you. So I've eliminated that shitty thing from my diet, so there's that. However, I didn't notice a big difference since I've left that out of my diet. Grapes, something I can't eat. Pears, cherries, these are all things I can't eat. Tomatoes, I do have some low-carb tomato sauce. Turns out, not only is that heavy in glyphosate, it also is a shadow of what a tomato should be because of the loss of nutrition related to glyphosate. So a lot of the vegetables that have this toxin in them aren't as nutritious as they were supposed to be, as they used to be, prior to all of this chemical farming. Sweet bell peppers, and here, the biggest staple in the American diet currently, and some would argue is a healthy part of the all-starch potato diet and bullshit, saturated with glyphosate potatoes. Not hard to believe, given that they're in the ground, and the ground is sprayed with glyphosate. So here are the foods that are supposedly the least polluted by glyphosate. Avocados, which is cool. That's a big keto food. I myself am not a huge avocado fan. I don't eat a lot of it. I occasionally have some, but I don't seek it out or anything like that. Pineapples, don't eat that. Cabbage, I don't eat that. Onions, I do eat onions. I do have onions have been a regular part of my diet. So, and will continue to be because I like them. Frozen sweet peas, I don't eat those. Papayas, don't eat those. Asparagus, I do occasionally like some buttered asparagus, so it's good to know that there is still a vegetable that is less tainted, especially organic, would probably minimize it. Mangoes, eggplant, I don't eat any of that. Honeydew, kiwi fruit, cantaloupe, cauliflower. So those of you who are doing the cauliflower pasta replacement, there you go, you're right onto something there. And grapefruit. So those are the worst of the worst. But it goes beyond that. There's crops that are saturated in the shit. Wheat. If you're eating any wheat product, bread, pasta, you should know that even though some of those crops are not even genetically modified, by the way, but they do spray Roundup on them to get them to die right before the harvest so that they lay down and go into the machine more efficiently. Thanks to Monsanto telling farmers that if you do this, you can, streamline the process at the harvest time and blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, we're getting a nice healthy lethal dose, in my opinion, of glyphosate poured directly onto wheat, which is, of course, combining with the, causing the leaky gut problem. Then gluten can really ramp that up. And you're mixing gluten with, glyphosate, and it's causing this perfect storm in your gut health that is causing chronic inflammation that is leading to a lot of these chronic diseases. And basically, you're destroying the lining of your gut and allowing a bunch of toxins that otherwise could not get into your body. You're throwing the door wide open, and as a result, your immune system is constantly inflamed, and you're constantly trying to fight off these toxins. Unsuccessfully in many cases, as you succumb to autoimmune diseases, as you succumb to psychiatric diseases, because this compromises the blood-brain barrier as well. You are succumbing to just a complete systemic failure because you're allowing this into your body. And so it goes without saying, I've known for a while now that I need to cut wheat and grain completely out of my diet and never go back, even though I miss pasta. And I've, may have fapped to the idea of occasionally having some fucking pasta. But I've reevaluated that. I don't want to have a cheat day that involves pasta anymore. That is how convinced I am by the data and the science and some of the studies I've dug into on this issue. And, it's up to you. But to me, the data and the lectures I've watched so far and the documentaries I've watched so far have been very convincing. And I haven't seen a lot of science on the other end that has not shown a significant amount of bias, for one, and B, isn't convincing and has some inconsistencies as far as a common sense standpoint on why things work the way they do. They always come at you from the we can feed a wider variety of population standpoint, or the body breaks it down, or this breaks down in the soil, it's biodegradable, which is untrue, because if it was so biodegradable, it wouldn't be in our fucking drinking water. It's also water soluble, which means it can get anywhere that there's water, which is pretty much everywhere. And so it's a fucking rabbit hole that we're or sunk into here. And it's hard, I gotta say, So go keto would be my advice. Fast often to help rebuild, to make new cells that aren't damaged with the glyphosate, to reduce your total intake of glyphosate as much as possible. I'm going more organic now, which means I don't get to eat out as much. It means I have to be really picky when I eat. Thankfully, I know how to fast my way through those situations. And it's going to make me a little bit more of a diet snob when it comes to social situations. But it is what it is. I want to see and test in myself, is this a real problem for me? So I'm going to get a little stricter in keeping in mind glyphosate-containing foods and how much of them I consume, if any. Which is going to land me a little bit more into the carnivore aspect, but that is not, there's meats are contaminated with glyphosate. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Water is contaminated with glyphosate, your air. So you can't avoid it. It's unavoidable. Not even in a completely organic environment as far as diet is going, because the soil has it, the water has it, the clouds are raining it down onto your organic crops. It is everywhere. Without a doubt, it is everywhere. It has been tested and shown to be everywhere. They raised what is the tolerable level in the regulations, by the way, because there was so much of it that was beyond their initial regulations they set. So they raised the bar. Instead of lowering our exposure to below their previous recommendations, they raised the recommendations so that they didn't create any waves in the fucking industry. So that's your government's protection of you. Enjoy that. So let me get into, as this video is winding down, this is Zach Busch. Zach Busch is probably one of the few vegan or plant-based, I don't know if he's full vegan or vegetarian, but he does advocate a lot of plant-based diet stuff. There are two areas I want to say as a disclaimer on what I think of Zach Busch. I think he does a lot of solid science, but that he is bastardizing the science a little bit to promote a product and a diet. However, that being said, he is probably one of the few plant-based doctors not talking about animals. In fact, I've sat through probably almost 3 hours of his lectures or interviews at this point, and I do hear the word plant-based thrown in here and there, but he is not preaching it. He is not sitting here saying, if you get rid of animals, you will be healthy. He is telling an entirely different story, which makes me respect him, even though I diverge in opinion on diet choice, and I also diverge in the fact that he is marketing a supplement. And there was a speech he was doing, which is this one here, that I was on board for like 80% of it, but then right about here in the speech, he starts going off about this supplement that he's promoting, which I looked is like $70 for a bottle of it. And, he goes over the science on why it works, and there's slides, but you can't see him in that video. And I have no doubt that he's probably done science to support his product. However, I do have a problem with supplementation in general. I should not have to buy a $70 bottle of shit every month or an $80 bottle of shit to fix my health. There's other ways. And I believe through my own personal health results and those of many subscribers of mine that there is no solution in a bottle. That there's lifestyle choices, there's foods we can eliminate, there's fasting, there's many steps we can take. But there are some things he does say that I can get behind as ways of mitigating the problem. A lot of his science I respect, and I was riveted for a lot of his talks. It's just the part where he's pimping out the supplement, kind of, if he could stop doing that, because that kind of, that to me takes credibility away, because as you know, any science that has some kind of financial interest is going to be biased. I don't care who the fuck you are. I don't care how good your product is. If you are using science to sell a product, then you are by definition biased in that science. You're not going to do science that disproves your product in any way. Or if you do, you won't share it with everyone. You'll only share the stuff that backs up your products. That is why you need to divorce science from any marketing, any products, any selling of shit. And you lost some points with me, Dr. Busch, when you started to try and pimp out the supplement. There are other talks in this subject that do not sell a supplement. They tell you what foods you can eat that have some of the probiotics that can metabolize glyphosate. I went over that in my last video a little bit. There's solutions that don't require a pill, don't require a supplement, that you can do dietarily, that you can do in a normal fucking environment where you can't grow your own garden and shit. You know, we're looking at realistic ways of dealing with this problem. We don't want to sit here and buy a $80 bottle of a supplement. I don't care how successful your clinic is at using this. I don't care what kind of testimonials you have to back this up. You really derailed yourself with me personally. This is my opinion, when you started to pimp out the supplement. That being said, a lot of the other things he says, and we're just going to give a few clips, a few listens to some of the shit he's saying, because it does resonate. It does get there to a point.
Message is that we do have more power than we allow ourselves to believe when it comes to healing ourselves.
So much so, and I think, you know, the only thing that civilization has to fear right now is that power, because we've literally built an entire economy of not just the United States but the entire Western civilization on healthcare, and that's been a hidden reality for a long time. But for thousands of years, the real control of populations has been around their food. And we find ourselves in that same, you know, if not amped up version now that we have 7 billion souls on the planet. That becomes very, very big business when you start to be able to control food. And we see that the ultimate political control is around the food chain and whether it delivers health or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you're somebody who's, you know, having this conversation as the hub of this wheel upon which there are many spokes that you speak to, that you have some level of expertise on, whether it's, you know, Monsanto and glyphosate and GMOs, the microbiome, you know, gut permeability, inflammation, autism, like all of these, you know, big pharma, big chemical, and the interplay of all of these. And they seem like they're disparate subjects and issues, but the more I learn about you and how you speak about all of this, clearly all of these things they're just part of this very intricate web where they're all interdependent upon each other and contributing in their own various ways.
That's exactly it. I've basically found myself in a massively reductionist state of my understanding of the world around us, when I had really spent, you know, 20 years of my life studying medicine, which was the opposite, where every year and minute you study in that environment, they try to convince you it's more and more complicated, that there's 1,000 different diseases, that there's 10,000 different drugs to treat those diseases. But in reality, what started to deconstruct that world was the realization that the cancer I was studying under the microscope when I was devising chemotherapy happened to be really the exact same process as an ulcer in the ankle of a diabetic patient. Again, sound totally disparate, but the end, totally reductionist viewpoint is it's only one thing, which is chronic inflammation.
So, and I agree with that. Chronic inflammation is a problem. Now, inflammation can be caused by more than one process, more than one agitator, so to speak. And like I said, this is why we can't just limit it to glyphosate as being the big, you know, the only problem. I contend it's a major player in our decline of health, along with overconsumption of sugar, with intense refining of carbs. We've created a perfect storm of shit, and we need to dig ourselves out of that. And another message he puts across is that this is something that doctors aren't going to do for you. This is something that hospitals aren't going to do. This is not something the government's going to fix. Us communicating right here, right now, and going out to the store with our money and deciding what to eat and what not to eat is the only active thing left to us. And we're already seeing it, with the sugar thing. People know sugar's bad now, pretty much. I'm pretty sure, some people don't give a shit, but for the most part, we all know that if you're eating that cookie, it's bad. If you're drinking that soda, it's bad. It's whether or not you give a fuck, But there's underlying things, there's combinations of things that are causing us problems, and they're all common things among sick people. They're all things that people suffering from these diseases do. And we need to identify them and not just limit our vision to this tunnel vision on one agitator. We need to expand it and try and reduce our exposure to as many of these things as possible. Elimination, probably not an option at this point, because of our food environment, because of the pollution aspect of it, because of the social environment. It's a tall stretch to ask somebody to go optimal health at this point, because it's such a daunting task. And I get optimal health motherfuckers say, hey, motherfucker, you ready to be optimal health now? I've been waiting and hoping that you finally swallow the blue pill instead of the red pill, or however the fuck that Matrix thing worked. And I'm still not on board with supplements, even with this shit. I'm not. I know that there are natural ways to deal with this. There are microbes in nature that eat glyphosate for fucking breakfast. I'm trying to figure out what those are and what foods they are. We have some vague ideas of the foods that we can eat that contain the microbes. They tend to be fermented foods of various plant and animal origin that have microbes that will consume glyphosate in your body. And in the soil, it turns out, as well. But that's between farmers to figure that shit out. And hopefully they do, so that we can eat more vegetables without fear of this poisoning. That being said, there's other cases against vegetables in the diet that have been brought up by carnivores lately. It's how you can reduce your exposure ultimately that'll increase your health span. Obviously, if you're eating a glyphosate, sugar, refined carb, processed food, standard American diet, you are pretty much shaving 20 years off of your health span. You're going to be on medication probably in your late 40s, early 50s, and it will slowly deteriorate, if not rapidly deteriorate, as you get older. We're seeing diseases of old age, we're seeing autism, we're seeing obesity, we're seeing diabetes, we're seeing cancer in children now. So it has gone beyond just increasing health span. It's about saving our lives, literally. Because if you're getting these diseases as a child, chances are you are not going to make it to 40s, 50s, and 60s. And that's why we need to start really changing our behavior of how we spend our money. What we buy in the grocery store is the only control we have. We don't have any control in the pharmaceutical world. We don't have any control over the food industry other than we ain't gonna buy your shit if it's fucking killing us. That's the only power we have, is as a consumer. You don't have to eat that shit. You don't have to spend your money in that restaurant if they're serving you unhealthy shit. You don't have to go to the grocery store and buy that unhealthy shit in a box. If we're going to fix our sickness, it starts with our own habits, our own ways of consuming. And I've learned that through trial and error, that the things I was doing were the cause of my problems. And, I've been able to weed out so much. I started off with, I'm just going to fast and do the standard American diet. And I quickly learned that that was not a full recipe for healing. It got me some progress, lost like 40, 50 pounds, something like that. And then I started to reduce the amount of standard American diet. I started to do keto adaptations, cyclical ketogenic diet, carb cycling, longer fasts. And gradually I learned that that wasn't quite enough to get where I wanted to go. And then I started to do more keto, less cheat days, almost to the point now where I haven't had a cheat day since November. And I'm seeing a whole new spectrum of improvements to the point where I'm there. To the point where I've reached my weight goals of being consistently in the 180s. Before I was like, I'd be nice if I get the 180s, but if I could just stay in 190s, now I'm in the 180s and I'm kind of like masturbating to the idea of being low 180s when I'm in the upper 180s. Consequently, for those of you who have stuck through an hour of this video, I am at 189 pounds solid. I have not been fasting. I've been eating within a 4 to 6 hour eating window every day. Ketogenic still. And my weight crept back up from 184 all the way up to 189 and has consistently for the entire week been at 189. No matter how much I feel I ate, I've not really I've snacked. I've done all, I've been trying to experiment with a little bit of overfeeding this week on keto to see what happens, because I'm getting some feedback that people that have gained weight on keto or that are having problems, and I wanted to see if I could duplicate that in myself, because I already know I can lose it. I could just do a 6-day fat fast and I'll go back down to 184, no problem. And there will be a fat fast after this process. There's things we can do, bottom line, and your level of health will be dictated by how far you want to take this. So if you want to be healthier, it isn't eat less, move more. It isn't going down and stocking up in the Whole Foods section necessarily, but things that I'm going to do to keep myself healthy, to not drive myself insane with all this new shit that I'm being exposed to in the realm of research, and that won't send me down, a rabbit hole of optimal health neuroticism that is going to consume my entire existence. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing as far as keto for the most part. I've been wanting to test out carnivore. However, I'm not going to just jump right into being carnivore. I want to gradually reduce my way there before I do a 30-day full-on carnivore experiment. I'm cutting out vegetables for the most part now, with the exception of onions. I think onions will be in there. Tomatoes, I'm probably going to try and cut. I'm going to miss my low-carb pizza solution, but I'm going to probably experiment in other areas. But I might occasionally have some of my low-carb pizza topping stuff that I put in a bowl and eat without any crust or anything. So I'm reducing that. I'm taking the nuts out for a while, because I do find that lately I think I've been abusing that, which will also reduce sugar intake, which is probably my glyphosate source for that particular healthy food. And I want to see what happens. How do I feel any different? Does my weight fluctuate any differently? It's another reason I'm not fasting as much right now. I'm still essentially doing at least a 16 to 18 hour fast every day. But I'm definitely eating as much as I want during the eating window. So I'm doing that. I'm staying keto. I'm eliminating some foods, but I'm not really eliminating anything animal-based. I'm still doing yogurt. And in fact, I've been more encouraged by the fact that yogurt's one of the foods that has microbes in it that can metabolize glyphosate. So if anything, I've been eating a little more yogurt than normal. I'm intrigued that people who go carnivore that aren't as worried about anything in terms of their, yogurt consumption and stuff like that, that they still remain in ketosis. So I've seen some data to suggest that despite elevated levels of protein intake and elevated levels of, in that case, lactose intake, that it really doesn't move the needle in ketosis. So I'm not eliminating any of the animal products necessarily. There is one thing in the plant world that I don't want to eliminate that I'm not entirely sure of on the health spectrum, given the new information about glyphosate, and that is chocolate, dark chocolate. It is a staple dessert for me. And there's another dessert that I'm not going to eliminate that is completely unhealthy, and I'm fully aware, and I don't eat a lot of it, and that's the Halo Top ice cream and stuff like that. And I'm trying to reduce my exposure to keto junk. I've already been on that as far as keto baked goods and that kind of stuff, I've reduced my exposure there quite a bit. But, occasionally I indulge, and I will still occasionally indulge, because I believe overall my health is good, and I've achieved the goal as far as health span is concerned. And I just need to maintain at this point. I could keep doing what I've been doing and probably live a long, productive, not healthcare fueled life. Not to say that something can't happen, or an infectious disease or some other issue, but for the most part, I think in terms of chronic disease, I'm out of the woods. And even if all I did was just keep doing what I've been doing, I would still remain out of the woods. It's just a matter of tweaking here and there at this point to make it healthy. If I want to go a little more optimal, then obviously I got to take some foods out that I currently eat. It's just a question of what does that get me in return? What does that do for my overall health and wellness? And I'm also tweaking in regards to the psychological benefits that I've noticed since doing this, that the great reduction in the intensity of depressions. I get down still. I want to take it all the way to where I don't even get down a little bit. My depressions are not soul crushing anymore. They're not destroying me, which they used to. The more I tighten, into less, carbs coming in or less vegetables coming in, I do notice differences in mood. That, like, for example, for the past couple days, I haven't had any vegetables at all, and I feel pretty good today, whereas a couple days ago I was on the downside. Not miserable, unfunctional depression, but definitely I was a little bit low. But contrasting that with the way I used to be, not a problem. So the links to these videos and this article will be in the description of this video. Let's take one more look at Dr. Zach Busch. I do recommend this. Like I said, I'm not a fan of him pimping the supplements out, and I disagree on the fact that it has to be a plant-based diet. The animals that we consume from factory farming are definitely going to start to be off the table for me, because they are pretty much just an intermediate layer between the intensely heavily glyphosated grains and me. They shave probably a level of exposure off by filtering some of it out, but it doesn't go away that way. Only bacteria really eats it. Good news is E. coli, which is prevalent in factory farming, does eat glyphosate. Unfortunately, we can't just have E. coli, because that probably will hurt us more than, it's one of them cures will kill you type deals. But I do know that E. coli can survive and thrive in a glyphosate-rich environment. It's not very reassuring. Doesn't say a lot for glyphosate. But, understanding that this is attacking our gut health, it is an antibiotic. It is destroying the intestinal walls to the point where it's increasing the exposure to the other toxins, such as gluten, for example, has become more potent because we've opened the door and let a lot more gluten into our life. Not just because we're eating gluten-rich foods, but we've literally just swung the door open in our little fucking intestinal walls and said, hey, come on in, gluten, come on, fuck us up. And between all of the muddy waters of marketing that have been thrown at this, it is really hard to know if you're really getting there. You know, that might be the little conspiracy theorist in the back of my head going, hey, asshole, how can you trust all these motherfuckers after they've been fucking you for 40 years? You feel that? Yeah, guess what? You can't trust anybody. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole you can get into. And trust me, I do have my share of subscribers that remind me of that rabbit hole. However, you got to start somewhere. You can't complete, because if you don't trust anything or anybody, you can't eat anything, and you just got to be a little picky. And the only way to do that is elimination diet. Figure out the foods that are fucking you and the foods that aren't fucking you. And once you figure out the most foods that aren't fucking you and you're happy with the way you're eating, then you can relax and stop watching glyphosate documentaries. That being said, let's listen to a little bit more from Zach Busch. This is a long video. Deal with it.
Over the last 20 years, we have been plummeting in the ranks internationally. We currently rank 49th in the world for health outcomes in the United States of America. We were just surpassed by Croatia. We were just surpassed by the Dominican Republic. We were just surpassed 10 years ago by Chile. We are pathetic in our health outcomes. We are one of the sickest countries in the world. And yet we spend $7,000 to $8,000 per person, per man, woman, and child every year on health care to run this tally of $3 trillion per year of money wasted. And so we are plummeting, and we are seeing these epidemics that are truly staggering in number. We're here to focus on the autism story today. 1 in 60 kids now autistic. But if we obviously expand that to the spectrum disorders, you're looking at more than 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 kids with some form of attention deficit or other sensory processing deficit. But then the numbers get really gross, with diabetes at 1 in 4, obesity at 1 in 3, major depression prevalence at 1 in 2. Major depression was like the leading studied disease in 1900. Freud and all of his colleagues in Europe were studying the hell out of the mood disorders. And it was really the cutting edge of evidence-based medicine at the time. So they were studying prevalence of disease very carefully at that time. And in Europe, in 1900, the prevalence of major depression was 1 in 100. And now in America, just 100 years later, it's 1 in 2.
So, if that little speech doesn't wake you up to how fucked we have been health-wise, thanks to our lifestyle, I don't know what to tell you. He is dead on right there. Dead on. Cannot argue with anything he just said. So what do we do about it? That's kind of what I've been talking about. Figure out the things that people who are sick, people who have depression, people who have the issues you feel you have or that you do have, what are they doing? What do they all have in common? And then stop doing those things. Instead of doing something else, just stop doing the things that are fucking you. You know, the things that you know are contributing to the problem. And, you know, go down to the bare minimum, make a list, write it down if you fucking have to. Go down to the bare minimum that you're willing to compromise in your lifestyle and food, and figure out where that stands in the big picture of what are all the common things that these sick people are eating, what are the medicines that they're taking, what are the immunizations they're getting when they're children, which is another thing that is not really addressed in this talk, but is a part of the problem. We need to really look at a whole systemically from a food, pharmaceutical, lifestyle, environmental standpoint. These are the 4 factors in health. These are the 4 things that make up our body, that determine our gut microbiome, is our environment. It's not just, you know, going down and buying the latest and greatest fucking yogurt in the goddamn store. That's not how it works. You get maybe 4 or 5, you know, microbes in there, 15 if you spend a lot of extra money. Yet, you know, and this is from Zach Busch had said this, we're supposed to have a biodiversity of about 20,000 species in our gut to be healthy. So we're creating what's known as monoculture by only eating a certain amount of probiotic. When it turns out one of the pieces of advice he gets is to get out in nature and expose yourself to other environments, biodiversity. Go out into the woods. He gives some really good solid points that I find make me feel better. I feel great when I go on a hike. I'm always feeling better afterwards. I'm always happy while I'm there. And it turns out that you're exposing yourself to new microbes, to things outside of your current environment. This is a lifestyle thing. This has nothing to do with food. Going out and swimming in an unpolluted body of water that isn't filled with glyphosate, that would probably be helpful, it can expose you to mineral content or minerally depleted. That's why I take my Epsom baths. So there's a number of things you can do in addition to food that can impact health. It's not all about going to the gym and eating whole foods, because it turns out there's problems in those paradigms. From a metabolic standpoint, going to the gym and not feeding your workouts can lead to metabolic drop. From, the food standpoint, you could be eating chemically farmed food or chemically produced shit or industrial meats, industrial fats, industrial food, which is going to defeat the whole purpose. And I would argue, if you're having problems on a ketogenic diet, that it might be time to go organic, which is another thing I'm going to do going forward. I'm going to try and eat more organically. I'm not going to be strict. There's going to be times when I can't, when I'm traveling in particular, that's going to be a challenge. However, whenever I can, whenever I have a choice, if I can go down and pick up some organic food and cook it somehow, I will do it. Meats and fats, organic. And that doesn't eliminate my exposure to glyphosate. I realize that. That basically just reduces my exposure. And that's the best case scenario. So what the fuck do I know, really? I just know what the fuck this motherfucker said and what a bunch of other motherfuckers said over the past 3 years. I know what I've done. I know where I'm at health-wise. I know where thousands of you who have subscribed to this fucking channel, I know that you're showing results, positive results. But we're all still chasing the end goal. And I see it all the time. A lot of us are almost there. And we get stuck in almost there for quite a while. I've spent a couple years in almost there. Now I'm there. And I still kind of want to push. I still have that desire to keep going. And it's going to be really hard to stop, to be honest with you. To put the brakes on and say, okay, I'm here. I'm ready to go. I don't need to do as much of this shit anymore. I just need to keep doing what I've been doing, maintain, so on and so forth. But I am always curious. Can I feel just a little bit better? Can I get a little bit thinner? Can I see some ab action? Can I fix this? Can I fix that? Mood is of a higher focus of me right now, but I realize that part of that is environmental, part of that is in the relationship department, which sucks. There's other factors involved in the mental health, but I am highly focused on that. Since I've removed a lot of addiction from my life, I'm definitely struggling a little bit with dopamine. I don't, have a lot of dopamine spiking activities. I play some video games every now and then to try and offset it. I go out on hikes, which spikes a lot of dopamine for me, or getting out and being creative. And these are all things that I don't get to do enough of because of the weather right now. Because I hate being out in the cold. I've tried doing it in the cold and I just get too miserable with it. But there are things I'm doing to tweak where I'm at. To make it the best for me, to where I'm the happiest, most content. And that's all you can really hope to achieve. I'm not here to promise you will reverse all of your chronic disease doing the things I do, but I am telling you that if you explore and you go out there beyond this video, beyond Zach Busch, beyond Lustig, beyond Gary Taubes, beyond all of these gurus who are telling you what to do, what not to do, what to eat, what not to eat. You know, for all of you plant-based motherfuckers, you know, you got Dr. Gregor's telling you how to live. You know, go beyond that. Figure out where you stand in this environment, where the things that you think you need to address the most for your health. And we are all a little different in our damage and in the health problems that we're experiencing. But there's enough knowledge floating around out there right now that you can fix your sickness, or at the very least, keep it managed without medication. You know, I'm not telling you to say, fuck it, I'm getting off my meds tomorrow. But you can eventually educate yourself to the point where you either don't get sick or you reverse some of this shit and get off medication. I get tons of messages to that effect on how keto has done that and how fasting has done that. I do tend to think that anything that improves during the process of going keto and fasting gets credited to keto and fasting, which is a little unscientific. I'm not quite ready to say that keto cures everything or fasting cures everything. But if what you're doing in your life is working, then obviously keeping doing that will keep whatever variable, whatever minor thing, or whatever detail was causing you a health problem. If you're on a macro level eliminating that thing, and I do believe you greatly reduce glyphosate through fasting and through keto, and that is part of the results we get, in addition to reducing sugar and other issues, you know, and going from being a carb burner to having full access to our fat. You know, all of these factors are, you know, you're getting the additional benefits because you aren't getting the thing that is causing that particular sickness in your life in as high a dose. And I do believe that because we choose to live the way we do, we have somehow coincidentally found our way into a category of health where we're not perfect, but we're not gonna fucking have these chronic diseases either. They're not going to be as prevalent as they are by the current numbers, by the current statistics. So that's where I'm at as far as how to not be sick. Figure out where you're at with your health, with your environment, with your lifestyle, the things that you are doing that are not helping, that you can stop doing. And if you stop doing those things and you see improvement, then you're on to something. It's really that easy. Start eliminating shit that you suspect, that you think might contribute to the problem, and remove it from your life, even if you're only doing it temporarily to find out if that was the problem. You can make huge strides in your personal health. If you just go to the doctor and let them pill your ass up, they'll keep pilling your ass up without curing your problem. Because it's a good business model to keep you sick, to not cure you, to just treat your symptoms and not the root causes. That is our healthcare industry, and why our health is one of the worst versus how much we spend on healthcare in the world. The only way out of that is to figure it out for ourselves, vote with our dollars, vote with how we spend money on healthcare. If a doctor is not treating you properly and wants to pill you up for everything and has very little knowledge, you know, if they're not like Zach Busch, who knows his shit and uses that knowledge to help people, you know, disagreeing a little bit on the plant-based thing and the supplement thing. But that being said, I have no doubt he's helped motherfuckers overcome illnesses. Figure out what works for you. Figure out who is helping you the most too. There are, you know, doctors and scientists and, you know, PhDs that I've listened to over the years that I found what they told me and their advice to be very valuable as far as putting me on the path that got me to where I'm at today. I never used to picture ever seeing the 180s at 42. You know, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I'm like, I'm just going to be a fat old fucker. The older I get, fatter I'm going to get. That's life. Oh, well. Then I would drink my Mountain Dew as I washed down the pizza, maybe stopping for a couple of dollar menu burgers on the way home from McDonald's, and that was my life. I've come a long way since then. Even gave up Pop-Tarts and shit. But remember, I'm not a fucking expert. I'm just a fucking asshole. Please like and subscribe for more motherfucking videos. And I'll make more motherfucking videos with the word motherfucking in every video. If you don't like the word motherfucking, you don't have to watch. It's really that simple. There's plenty of motherfuckers that don't say fuck or something. If you found this video helpful, useful, or of any value to you, and you have the means, you can go to ScottTheTruckDriver.com. The link is in the description, and leave a tip in the tip jar, and I can spend another hour and a half of my life making another video, plus the 4 to 8 to 12 to 14 hour. I think I did 14 hours of research over the weekend because I sat and watched a lot of this shit, and read quite a few articles because I kept coming up with questions that I, like which microbe fixes fucking, what can I eat that will get rid of glyphosate? I'm kind of in that realm, and there's not a lot of data in that realm, but I'm still exploring. So, I spend a lot of time on the research side of the house too. And in order to do that, I can't be doing that while I'm driving to Uber or working at the bar or all the other shit I do for money. So that is what the tip jar is for. Or Patreon if you choose to do the Patreon thing. If you don't want to do that, just watch, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. Say, hey, this motherfucker helped me by telling me this, so maybe he help you. He says fuck a lot. Just keep that in mind. Take the kids out of the room. But then take the knowledge and use it to help the kids. Also, on my website, you will find an Amazon affiliate area where you can go and purchase things from Amazon that help along your journey, or just stuff that you want to buy through Amazon. If you go through those links, that helps the channel out with no extra cost to you. Obviously, watching ads helps. So all of these little things help. There will be a live stream this week. I'm tentatively looking at Friday as the day for the live stream. I'm not sure of the subject yet, but it'll probably be along the themes of optimal health, of glyphosate, of the new rabbit holes I've kind of digging around in right now, of the whole organic thing, supplements that people are going to want to argue with me about, so on and so forth. So there's that. Not going to do a podcast this week. I'm finding that a lot of these videos have become more audio-centric, long, and able to be listened to instead of stared at. So enjoy that for now. If financially, like I said, this month is okay, so I don't feel the need to do exclusive paywalled content, which is essentially what the podcasts are. It's basically an audio form of what I do here on YouTube. That only people that buy the podcast can get. And those podcasts are there if you want to support. There are some podcasts that are there, and I will do future podcasts. But I don't think I want to make it a weekly thing because I've upped the amount of content I'm here on YouTube, and I think I'd be asking too much to have you guys sit through an hour and a half video listening to this or watching this, and then also sell a motherfucking podcast on top of that. So I think that would be unrealistic. So, have a nice motherfucking day and shit.